whole lot of real complicated stuff we're going to jump into, but it's a lot of stuff people have probably been reading stuff online or watching YouTube videos on, and they're not really sure how it actually works or doesn't know the actual language in there. And so we're going to actually touch on the language, the words in the actual SB 1075 that changes the laws around wholesaling, changes definitions, creates definitions around wholesaling. And we're going to actually go through each one, all the mandatory disclosures, all the mandatory provisions, and at the end we actually have a fully 100% compliant contract that agents or investors can just grab and either pull the paragraphs off of it and drop it into their own contract, or can just use our full contract. It's a compliant contract. So right off the bat, if you are actively involved in wholesaling, want to do wholesaling, involved in investing at all, because a lot of people don't think they're wholesaling, they think they're investing. And there's a difference. And so if you're actively investing at all, or if you're working with clients who invest at all, I've learned there's a lot more agents nowadays than you realize that are listing homes on the MLS that have POA signed listing agreements, and the seller is not actually the one they're communicating with. And they think, well, there's POA, I can list this, and you need to make sure you understand what's happening in the investment process. You need to know who's what's happened. You just need to know all these things for your client, for the buyer, you can be fined by the MLS up to $2,500 per incident. We have a fun story where we got $35,000 worth of fines a couple years ago. We got them reduced. But if you don't know these things, they will slap you on the wrist and they do not care. They will give you your fines. So read the bill, it's 8 pages. It's not real long, it's just definitions. I'm gonna go through all of it here, but it's not real long. Take a look at it. I'm going to send out these slides to everyone at the end, so you can click this link and go look at the bill. It's not very long. You should read it. Okay, so definitions. Kind of add a couple. So in 2021, with the Predatory Wholesaling Act that was passed, we added public marketing of equitable interest to licensable activities. So everyone's licensed, you know what licensable activity is: soliciting real estate, negotiating real estate, all those things. Now, marketing equitable interest is a licensable activity, meaning if you are going to market your equitable interest in a property or someone else's equitable interest in a property, then you have to have a license to do that. You cannot do that any longer on Facebook pages or through large emails. We'll talk about that in a minute, if you are not licensed. And there's a lot of people out of state that are still wholesaling or investing in state that are not doing this correctly. And if you're assisting them, you could be liable for these things as well. So make sure we understand it is a licensable activity to wholesale real estate now, to publicly market your equitable interest. Does that make sense? Everyone, we're all licensed. Everyone understands what equitable interest is? Okay. All right, I'm not going to go too far back. Okay, so more definitions. Public marketing. The definition in the 2021 Predatory Wholesaling Act: all advertisements, public marketing is all advertisements and marketing conducted in a public or open manner or place. Not real detailed, right? So a lot of people say, well, I'm not publicly marketing, I'm in a private Facebook page. Or I'm not publicly marketing, I have an email list of buyers that I send my stuff out to. And so let me go forward. The Oklahoma Attorney General has an opinion on these things. Are private Facebook groups and opt-in emails public marketing or not? And their answer is what you would expect. It depends. It requires factual analysis, is what they say. However, they give us some guidelines. So they say if advertising an equitable interest in real estate in a property to a small group of close friends through a private social media group or an email chain, does not require real estate, right? So if the Kreger family has a private Facebook group, or if Copper Creek has a private Facebook group and we do it through there, we all have separate common interests. We're all in a separate group. It's a small, controlled environment. If we go to, and so it goes on to say, conversely, advertising your interest in a property in a private social media group or an opt-in email chain with many thousands of members who only mutual connection to the group or chain is their shared interest in buying or selling, that is public marketing. So if you go to Oklahoma City Investors Facebook group and there's 1,800 people in there, and your only connection with them is that you also are an investor in Oklahoma City, the Attorney General believes that that could be ruled as public marketing and it is a licensable activity. Does that make sense? So the answer is like, mess around and find out is kind of the answer, but they give you some guidelines. And you can argue small group versus large group. You can argue, is our only interest that we buy? I mean, you could argue all those things, but what I advise with everything is if you have to ask, you probably know, do the thing that's a little bit better, safer. Questions on the Attorney General opinion. So it's kind of it depends answer. Okay, so the SB 1075 created more definitions, or added more definitions in our licensee and the OREC's explanation of licensees. So it added definition of wholesaler. Any individual, a lot of people don't know about some of this. So any individual engaging in the business of securing, negotiating, facilitating the sale of residential real estate for the primary purpose of transferring, assigning, or selling their equitable interest in the property for financial profit. This includes people that enter into a contract with the intent of assigning or selling contractual rights to another party before taking possession or legal ownership. So that's obvious wholesaling, assigning. The other piece that a lot of people think they're doing in avoiding these laws is by double closing. This law groups double closings in with wholesaling. A lot of people think I'm taking possession, I'm not wholesaling. You are not. It's a double close. You're taking possession for 8 seconds until the title company files the next deed. There's no funding, anything like that. So double closes, according to the state, are wholesaling now. Make sense? A lot of people see that as a loophole and a workaround. It is not. It is looped up into this. So yes. Careful what you say.
While we're under the hood here.
Yeah.
If you have enough liquid to fund your own and still do a same-day closing, I think that's not pass-through funding, so that's not applicable. Right?
So I don't think it has to do with if you can or cannot fund it, and I'll defer here in a second, but I don't think it has to do if you can or can't. I think it comes down to your intent. Their intent is never to close on the property and take ownership. Their intent is to profit from the sale of I think. Is that fair to say? I think it comes down to their intent. Also, we have 2 representatives, Patrick and David, from the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission. So this is being recorded. And you're in trouble if anything says anything. So yeah. So again, I think it comes down to the intent. A lot of things can be argued, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the intent. We'll talk more about how broad some of this is later and how it is broad intentionally. Was talking to an investor who has different exit strategies with a property. And when they get a property under contract, they might not know if they're gonna flip it, hold it as a rental, or wholesale it. And so the answer to that is pretend you're gonna wholesale it and do the most disclosures as you need to. Because you could say, oh, I thought I was gonna flip it, but then I ended up wholesaling it the day before. Like, sorry, I don't need to do all these things. And again, I think you're gonna get in trouble for that. So if there is even a potential of doing wholesaling, you need to comply with these rules, new laws. Questions on definition of a wholesaler. Basic assignment, but also double closes. That's important to understand that, because a lot of people will say, I'm not wholesaling, I have to do that, I'm double closing on it. That is still a wholesale. We talked about the letter from the Attorney General. Slides got messed up. Okay, now we're talking about actual requirements inside the law. So the law created some definitions so that we can have more clarity around what things are and what certain activities are, but it also created requirements around provisions that you have to require in the contract and disclosures that you have to disclose in your contract. Some of these should have probably been in a lot of wholesale contracts anyway. Some of them are new, and when we go through our new one in the end, I'll show you, there's like 5 new paragraphs in a contract that are all just kind of required from this new law. So, mandatory disclosures. Per SB 1075, in your contract to purchase, you must disclose intent to assign or sell equitable interest in residential real estate for a higher price than what is offered to the homeowner. What I've seen in the past is people will say, we are a real estate investor and we intend to profit. That's not enough now. I've seen people say that in the past. Now you have to say at a higher price than what's offered to the seller with intent, as it states here. Second disclosure. You are required to put a disclosure stating that the homeowner should seek legal advice before signing any contract. Again, I've seen that in a lot of wholesaler and purchase contracts prior. It's in our OREC contract. It's just a good practice as an adult to seek legal counsel or seek some sort of professional counsel. But it is now required. You must put it in your contracts that the seller, homeowner should seek legal advice before signing a contract.
Perspective, where we've been instructed you're not closing this deal with us unless you have that.
Say that again.
You can't close a legacy without that.
Okay, so this is a stipulation for, yeah, and different, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. Different title companies are coming out with different guidelines with this now, and I think it will continue to evolve. So as a real estate agent that works with investors or as an investor yourself, make sure you're communicating, because you'd hate to wrap up a deal, send it to a title company, and then a week or two later realize, shoot, we can't do this, or this is not right, or this is, whatever it might be. So communicate with your title company. Thank you, Scott. Last one is disclose in writing to the homeowner that the homeowner has the right to cancel the contract without penalty within 2 business days after the execution of the contract. This is kind of a big, this is one of the bigger changes. Previously, if you signed a contract to buy or sell a house, you are in a contract now. And to get out of it, you have to breach or you have to have legal rights out of this contract. Now, if you are wholesaling, per the definition a couple slides ago, the homeowner has 2 business days to cancel the contract. And we'll talk about it here in a second, but you have to provide them a state-issued cancellation agreement with your contract. And our compliant contract has it as page 3. It's just page 3 of the contract is the cancellation form. So I'll show you that in a minute. But now homeowners have 2 business days. So that does not include Saturday, Sunday, or federal holidays. So if you get it under contract on Thursday or Friday, they have until Monday. And if it's Martin Luther King Day, they have until Tuesday, and whatever it might be, right? So it could be, there could be a 5-day period maybe where they have a right to get out because it is business days, not calendar days. That's important to understand. But big stipulation now. Homeowners have 2 business days to back out of a contract. It was 7 days in the initial draft of the law, which is a long time. And so yeah, a lot of them close in 7 days. Yeah, so now it whittled down to 2. Questions on any of these disclosures? Pretty basic stuff. The best thing you can do and what we do in our contract is copy and paste this stuff in. You can, get creative with some of the content to make it look not so whatever, but just copy and paste it in. Sharpen your sales skills and your communication skills with homeowners if you're an investor or if you're a real estate agent, so that you don't have to try to get creative with the language, if that makes sense, right? Just copy and paste these things in. So it also stipulates a couple things wholesalers cannot do. Again, if you are doing what is defined as wholesaling, intending to profit from your equitable interest in whatever manner or style you're trying to profit from that equitable interest, there are certain things you cannot do. One, you cannot act as an advisor or a consultant or in any other manner representing that the wholesaler is acting on behalf of the homeowner. So one practice that's become popular as of the last couple of years is forms of novation, if you're familiar with the novation process. But essentially, a wholesaler or an investor will get a POA, a power of attorney, signed by the seller, and then they can sign real estate-related documents on behalf of the seller. So there's a lot of opinions on this. If you zoom out enough, you've got a purchase contract where you and the homeowner's interests are conflicting. For me to make more, you have to make less. For them to make more, you have to make less, right? Your interests are conflicting. So if you have a conflicting interest and then you sign a power of attorney to sign real estate documents for that person whose interests you are conflicting with, it creates opportunity for predatory practices is what it creates. Now, not everyone who does POAs is predatory, but it creates opportunities, and the state is trying to protect homeowners. Does that make sense? So if you see any kind of contract or any process of wholesaling that has POAs, it is now illegal. Now, if you're to take a step back a little bit, I think I may have skipped this earlier. If someone is buying properties outright to fix and flip or buying them to rent, and they are actually, their intent is to take possession of the home, these laws do not apply to them. These are only for people attempting to profit from their equitable interest in the property. Does that make sense? Their intent is not to close on the property. So if I'm buying a house to flip, I can do these creative methods, to get skinnier on a price or to give seller better terms or to do what these things are intended for, I can do these things. However, if my intent is to profit from my equitable interest and I do not intend on closing, then I cannot sign anything that gives me any representation over that person. Does that make sense? Very important. Again, it creates an opportunity for predatory actions. So if you're a real estate agent and you're working with someone who says, hey, I'm an investor and I list houses on the market that I'm wholesaling and I do it because of this POA and the owner is John Doe, but your investor's name is Jim, whatever. Ask questions because they're probably violating the law now, right? If it's not the right person, because POAs are now illegal. They cannot represent himself or herself as holding a certificate or a license or being a member of a licensed profession without possession of that certificate or license. Again, I see a lot of out-of-state wholesalers or investors maybe calling themselves real estate professionals, which they are. Their profession is investing in real estate. I think that can be misleading, and I think that could potentially violate some of this. So don't pretend you're licensed, pretend you're a realtor or any of that stuff if you're not, but it stipulates it and outlines it here. And the wholesaler shall be prohibited from placing any lien or encumbrances or otherwise clouding title of property. There's another big change. It became very popular as of late that when you lock a property up in a wholesale, your equitable interest, you would go secure your equitable interest with a lien on the property so that they couldn't go potentially sell it to someone else. Make sense? And so now that is illegal. People would do this through the novation process. They would do it through any kind of contract process. As soon as you get a house under contract, they go down to the courthouse, they file a lien for whatever they feel their equitable interest is valued at. Cannot do that any longer. So again, if you are an investor doing these, stop doing these. If you are a real estate agent working with investors that maybe explain this process. If any real estate agents are working with investors, this is what I'm doing with our wholesalers and investors in our brokerage and clients that we work with. Sit down with them and say, show me what you're doing. Because a lot of wholesalers and investors they're all trying to recreate the wheel a little bit and try to find that edge, right, with trying to make money in the real estate investing. So make them show you what they're doing to make sure it's compliant. Because if you're trying to profit from equitable interest, which is what all wholesalers are doing, they have to comply. And over the years, we've been finding different ways to kind of skirt certain things to grease the wheels a little bit, to make it easier and quicker and faster and better. But it creates opportunity for predatory practices. So any investor you're working with, or if you're an investor yourself, make sure, go through your process, and I'm doing that with our investors to make sure we're compliant. So last thing, big change, this is now illegal. If you are wholesaling, you cannot do this. Again, I'm looking to OREC now. If I'm buying and my intent is to take possession, I can still place lien to protect my equitable interest. So again, none of this applies if your intent is to take possession. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, sorry. You had the scenario earlier where you're an investor and you change your mind in the process from going to.
Did it die?
Now I'm going to wholesale this property as
I think the thing died.
Investment.
Mm-hmm.
If I place a lien on the property and then I change my mind that I'm not going to do that, like how do I protect myself as the wholesaler? Do I just go release the lien and say, now I'm going to wholesale it? Like, how do you make sure that you stay compliant with this law and you change your mind in the middle of that?
If you just make disclosures, would you just give the homeowner the disclosures at that point and tell them, hey, this is what we're doing? Yeah?
I think that's a really great question that we'd have to look at. Sure. In their investigation. I don't think there's nothing clear cut right now.
Yeah. This is annoying. I think the thing is dying. I think the battery's dying. Yeah, and so that's kind of where I go back to. I think the answer is if wholesaling is even maybe in your exit strategy, comply. Just do the. If it's working, just leave it. Sorry for you guys at home. That stinks. You're gonna have to do this now. So yeah, if you're unsure, just pretend you're gonna just do the most disclosures. When in doubt, disclose. So we cannot place liens now. Mandatory provisions. So additional things that are required in the contract. Thank you. If your arm gets tired, just drop it. So mandatory provisions that are required in the contract now that may or may not have been in your contract or an investor's contract prior. So any contract or agreement used by wholesaler shall contain the following: name, address, and telephone number of the wholesaler. That most likely was not in, you probably had the name and a signature line of the wholesaler, but address of business and phone number were most likely not in a contract prior. Address of the residents involved in the transaction, that was 100% of the time in a contract because you have to identify the property. The total consideration to be given by the wholesaler to the homeowner, most likely in the contracts, but a lot need to be broken down as what am I giving for earnest money. If we're doing any kind of creative subject twos or any kind of seller finance or anything kind of funny like that, you want to know what is the total consideration needs to be broken down to the homeowner. And then a complete description of the terms of payment or other consideration included, but not limited to, any services of any nature which the wholesaler will represent he or she will be performing for the seller. So anything you're going to be doing during the contract needs to be stipulated in there. If all I'm doing is getting under contract, inspecting it, and buying it, that's all you need to be doing in there. But if there's anything else you're going to be doing during that process, walking other buyers through it to maybe potentially wholesale it, or doing anything else, I'd say that scope of work needs to be stipulated so that the sellers know what's happening. I've had it happen tons and tons of times where I'll work with a wholesaler and the wholesaler is lying to the seller. I have to be there at the showing because I have to tell them my HVAC guy is coming when it's really me, a buyer, right? They're lying to the seller. They're making the seller think they're buying the home when it's actually me, a buyer, coming to look at it, and they have to lie to why I'm coming, right? It's happened more than 10 times. It happens a lot. They have to be present because they don't want the seller to know this is a buyer who's going to pay more than I'm paying. So any activity you're going to be doing, I think, needs to be outlined and stipulated. I don't think by law has to be stipulated. So if you're
how you're going to market the property as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be listing on the MLS or doing anything else like that, if you can figure out how to do that without getting fined.
Well, even on just social media and stuff.
Yeah.
Specifying hey, this is what I plan on doing.
I intend
I'll
to
be
market it.
marketing
Yeah.
on these programs or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes. I don't think ours stipulates what marketing activities we're going to be doing, but because they might see their house being marketed on Facebook, potentially. So at a price different than you gave them. So yeah, probably not a bad idea to stipulate what ways you're going to be. Questions on the mandatory provisions? Graham, you look like you're questioning something. All right. Last mandatory provision. This is another big one. Most 100% of contracts did not have this before, so you need to make sure your contract has this. The following notice shall appear on the contract in immediate proximity to the space reserved for the seller's signature. So the last thing they see right before they sign needs to be this paragraph. Notice required by Oklahoma law. You may cancel this contract at any time before 2 business days. So whatever midnight is at the 2 business days. Wholesaler or anyone working for a wholesaler cannot ask you to sign or have you sign cannot ask you to sign or have you sign any deed other than or any other document. There's so many words here. Sorry, I'm too close. Any document until your right to cancel this contract has ended. See the attached notice of cancellation form. So according to the law, you have to attach a notice of cancellation with your contract. So see attached notice of cancellation form for explanation of this right. You should always consult an attorney or a community organization before signing any legal documents concerning your home. It is advisable that you find your own attorney. The law requires this contract to contain this entire agreement. You should not rely upon any other written or oral agreement or promise. So it has to be in 12-point font and it has to be bold by law as well. So if the rest of your contract's 10-point font, it's got to be 12. By law, it has to be 12-point font and bold. I don't know if I left that out or not. Yeah, I did. It has to be 12-point font and bold. That's important. It stipulates that. So this, is it pointing at is it getting did it die entirely?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's recording.
Okay, I didn't know if they can see the screen.
Oh, he does. Okay, yes.
This freaking thing. All right, someone remind me to buy a tripod. That doesn't need batteries.
There you go.
Yeah, that doesn't need batteries. Someone email me. Okay, so this notice, this entire paragraph, copy and pasted, needs to be in your purchase agreement. Okay, it has to be right above the signature line, right above where the seller signs. Has to be 12-point font, has to be bold. Okay, make sense? Failure to include any of the required disclosures or provisions in this section shall render the contract invalid. That means day before closing, seller says, hey, you didn't do this one thing, I'm out. They don't have to sell it to you. It will be invalid and unenforceable by a wholesaler. Also, it shall entitle the homeowner to any earnest money. So if you don't disclose properly, you forfeit earnest money. Now the homeowner can get the earnest money, okay? A lot of wholesalers put like $10 down as earnest money or $1 down as earnest money. I don't know if there's anything like that. But $100, stuff like that. I don't know. What's normal? What are people? 500s. Okay, it depends. It's normally smaller. Interrupt me.
So a lot of times we see the end buyer is what they call it.
Mhm.
Them putting theirs money down. So, in a manner of speaking, it's pretty sticky from the title perspective.
Ah.
because That's not a contract that your seller is in.
Mm-hmm.
And he never gave that when you initial contract to begin with.
So the wholesaler never put earnest in.
A lot of times.
The end buyer did. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that creates a sticky situation for you guys. That OREC and lawyers will be involved in, I'm sure. So this whole thing plants a bunch of landmines that we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But yeah. So again, if you don't disclose properly, if you don't add all the provisions, if they go look up that this provision is supposed to have this sentence and it's not in your contract is invalid and unenforceable, and they get the earnest money. So make sure they're in there.
Question, so does this also relate to a very well-known, I believe they're a wholesaling company that exists?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Non-refundable earnest money, and you're selling them around $7,500. So does
When they
these
sell it.
rules apply to them with these same,
Yeah, the rules apply to everybody.
so how are they able, I know you don't know, but,
So you're acting as a buyer in that stance. So
right? Because
most,
sending a client their deals,
yeah.
and they want to go under contract, these mandatory provisions will, I'm responsible for the.
As the end buyer, yeah, you are. Because this really governs the homeowner and wholesaler relationship. What you're talking about is the wholesaler-buyer relationship, which is the back end of that contract. So, but you are at the mercy of that wholesaler doing anything incorrectly, because if they don't, that contract they have is unenforceable, and then you have no property. And if you have spent any money doing anything, you could be out that money. You could be out that earnest money, apparently. Because I don't know if title companies are going to have to give your earnest money to the seller
Might be the last investment call that end buyer takes from that.
from that wholesaler. Yeah. There are wholesalers large enough that they have to be complying with this because they already have huge targets on their back. They have to be complying. And I know they have to be. They just have to be. Their whole business is wholesaling. They have to be complying with it. If not, you guys are going to be busy. Because it's also, we'll talk about it in a minute, but you get in trouble per incident. And so if I wholesaled 20 houses last month, OREC can say, let me see all 20 of those contracts. And if all 20 of them are wrong, it's up to $5,000 per contract. And if it's malicious intent, then you could probably go on and do more and all kinds of other stuff. So very important to understand. If you don't do the things that you're supposed to do, contract is invalid, unenforceable, and homeowner gets your earnest money. Whoever paid it, but gets earnest money. Consequences. So OREC governs these rules now. So it is a licensable activity. So OREC governs your license, and it also can enforce rules on non-licensed members as well. You can't act as a real estate agent or anything like that. So consequences can range anywhere from required continued ed, all the way to revoking your license, suspending your license, and fining. $2,000 per violation, up to $5,000 per transaction. But again, if you wholesaled 10, 15, 20, or if they found out that you've been violating and they saw you, I mean, you can go back as long as you want, right? As long as you've been wholesaling. 5 years. So they can go back 5 years. So if someone's doing a bunch, back to 5 years, I guess, can you only go back to when the law was enacted?
Yeah, we would only govern transactions. once
From the
a
law.
year.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
But,
yeah.
brokers keep files for 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It would be a-
So if we ask you if you have older files and you tell us you're not very smart.
Older than 5 years? Yeah, no, those get shredded. On 5 years plus day one, they get shredded. They get deleted. So fines can be lose your license, which means you can no longer wholesale, right? There goes your income, there goes your money, your profession. You cannot do real estate or anything. You could be revoked or suspended. Continued ed or fines can pile up per violation and per. So again, if you left off multiple provisions there, that could be multiple violations. That can go up to $5,000 per deal and can pile up. So, so last piece down here, in having conversation with governing bodies, language was left broad on purpose. The idea is to create guardrails around this process, but complaints and situations and lawsuits are going to really beef up the regulation behind these laws. So the real question, if someone's like, what about this and this and this? Well, the answer is we don't know yet. But again, it kind of goes back to the mess around and find out. Let's see. Let's put it in front of an OREC committee. Let's put it in front of a judge, and let's get some case law built out of it. And if you want to be the guy, there's the cutting edge and the bleeding edge, if anyone's ever heard that, right? You don't want to be on the bleeding edge because that person gets slapped with tens of $20,000 fines to go create guardrails for us now. But someone's going to get a book thrown at them probably. And I hope it's no one in this room or in this brokerage, but someone's out there doing the wrong things and they're going to get in trouble and they're going to create more guidelines for us based on what their actions are. So know that it's vague on purpose. And that can be, you want to try not to operate in the gray area because again, OREC and governing bodies are giving you enough rope to go hang yourself if you want. Or you can just think, if I have to ask, let's err on the side of disclosure. Does that make sense? Because with all these laws, I promise there's going to be creative people going out and finding ways to create money and make money around these. So if you have to ask, err on the side of disclosure. The compliant contract. So when you get a copy of this, this takes you to a Google Doc. When you go to that Google Doc, you cannot edit it. It is my version. So you will just make it go up to File, make a copy, save, or copy and paste it into a Word doc or whatever. But I'm going to go through it real quick. I'm going to go through it real quick. Just kind of show you what it looks like. It's just, oh, come on. I just delete it all. There it is. Yeah, I did. I hit it. Nothing happened. I'm like, oh. Nobody move. All right, here we are. Now we're getting there. Okay, we're going to walk through these things. So this is the whole contract. It's 2 pages plus the cancellation, so it's 3 pages. Agreement for purchase and sale of real estate. Everything so this is for you to use, investors to use, whoever. So everything in red, you just fill out, right? It's a plug and play contract you fill out. Everything highlighted with the key button is what is required by law that we put into this contract for to comply with the regulation. So seller name, buyer name, property, county of the property, legal description, street address. Again, 100% of the time it was probably in those contracts, but now it is required, so I highlighted it. Ew. What? All right, street address. Again, purchase price and the total consideration to the seller. So we talked about what's going to be paid in. There's earnest money, We go into earnest money more down, all real standard, typical language, contract language you're going to find in the OREC contracts and everything. But price, earnest money, remaining balance due at close, offer expiration date. We're going to scroll down. How closing costs will be divvied up. Again, typical investor contracts, the OREC contract's what, 8 pages with signature pages? Normal investor contracts are 1 or 2 pages. There's just a lot left out of them. But we still break out prorations, who pays what closing costs, stuff like that. So if you've not worked with an investor contract, this might look really naked, but it's fine. One big thing a lot of people don't know, I see a lot of people that are not aware of this and are not doing this actively. If you are a licensed professional, or if any member of the entity that is buying it, if We Buy Homes LLC is buying the property and anyone in ownership of that entity is licensed, you have to disclose that to the homeowner. Not only do you have to disclose it, you have to disclose your name and the license number. So most people, when they disclose that, they just say one or more of the owners of this entity is a licensed real estate agent. That is not enough. You have to say one or more of the agents, whatever, Brett Kreger, license 160868. You have to disclose your name and your license number in any contract you're a member of. That's why in OREC, ours are at the bottom. It's all laid out. But most people leave this out as licensed professionals when they're wholesaling or investing. So not just the name, license number, or not just the vague someone is licensed. It has to be a name and a license number. So if that's not in your contract now, make sure that's in there. All right, major key assignment, disclosure requirement. So copy and pasted this straight from the law. Pursuant to SB 1075, the undersigned wholesaler discloses to the homeowner that he or she intends to assign or sell his interest, his or her equitable interest in the residential property described below for a higher price and offered to the homeowner. Copy and paste. And again, if you're having the right conversations with that homeowner, they're not going to be like, what? They know what you're doing, which has to be disclosed, hopefully. Has to be disclosed. So copy and pasted it. This should be highlighted. I don't know why. Property address, name of wholesaler, address of wholesaler, phone number of wholesaler. This is all required. I'll do it later. This is all required now. Your business of address of business, phone number, name of wholesaler have to be on here now. Legal advice disclosure. In compliance with Oklahoma law, the homeowner is hereby advised in writing to seek legal advice before signing any contract concerning his or her home. Copy and paste it from the law, put straight into the contract. Section 16, homeowner's right to cancel. Copy and paste it from the law, put straight in here. The homeowner has the right to cancel his contract without penalty within 2 business days from the date of execution of the contract. Cancellation may be made by delivering or mailing a signed notice of cancellation to the wholesaler at the address listed above before the expiration of the 2 business days. 12-point font, bold lettering. I could not read that earlier, so I'm not going to read it again. But copy and pasted. This has to be copy and pasted, and you see it's right above the signature line. So anywhere, when you go back and look at this, when you get the slideshow and you click on this and go look at it, if it's highlighted, it is required by state law to be in there. And it was copy and pasted from the state law. So anything you change, you're deviating from a 100% compliant contract. And the more you pull out of it, the more gray area you create and the more opportunity for consequences you create. So I would say the more you can copy and paste, put this in there, the better off you will be. Last thing, anyone see my mouse? There it is. Give me a minute. Page 3 is the OREC issued cancellation of wholesale contract. So this has to be delivered with the contract. We even asked, we had one of our investors ask, can I provide it after? Like as soon as they sign, it automatically emails it to them. OREC advised, no, it needs to be provided together. It stipulates provided with the contract. So at the same time they're signing your purchase agreement, they also are receiving this cancellation document. And it is not a mutual signature. All it is a seller's signature. All they have to do is sign it, deliver it to you within 2 days, and it's canceled. It explains it in here for them, But I would recommend making this page whatever of your purchase contract. Make it page 3 of 3 or 4, whatever. Make it the last page of your agreement to comply with SB 1075, because they need to be issued that. Any questions on this contract? Any questions at all?
Where in the contract on the contract you provided, would we add what we intend on doing?
Marketing?
Yes.
I'd probably put it in the additional, there's an additional provision section.
13.
Yeah, 13.
Okay.
That's what it is on the contract too, isn't that crazy? Totally by accident. 13. I would just say, wholesaler intends to market the property by X, Y, and Z if you wanted to have those extra disclosures. Or, you could put in here, I don't know if this gives us permission, reasonable access to the home. To give reasonable access to the home for investigations or anything. So per the OREC contract, it requires buyer is granted reasonable access to do your inspections. If you know you're gonna bring some people through, you might throw that in there. Homeowner will grant wholesaler reasonable access with X hours notice to do whatever, you know what I mean? And that way you're not fighting and, contractually you have to, all that stuff. So might not be a bad idea. I know there's investigations in here, but. That might be something you add in there. But yeah, anything you feel important enough that you're going to force them to do or ask them to do, or that you're going to do outside of what's expressly written, might as well throw it in there as an investor or as a real estate agent. More disclosure, the better. More transparency, more expectation setting, the better for everybody involved. Questions on wholesaling in general? Questions for title companies or OREC in general? We got him here. We get to yell at him. Do whatever you want. Yeah, every day. Yeah, Doug.
So we talked about double closings being illegal in terms of wholesaling.
Not illegal. It's wrapped up in the definition now. So you can double close.
It's still considered wholesale.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we talked about intent on closing on the property. So what happens, how's it viewed when you close on the property, actually bring cash, fund it, take title to it, an hour later, sell the property?
If your intent is you marketed your equitable interest and your intent was not to own the property. You owned it for an hour, but your intent is not to own it. Is that?
Yeah, I would say if there's an agreement prior to closing.
Yeah.
Prior to you closing that, we would probably look at that as wholesale.
Yeah. You agree with an end buyer, which means your intent is not to have it. If that makes sense. So yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. One workaround, slightly more expensive, but I think accomplishes a lot of the same things, is what's called wholetailing, if you're familiar with that term, which essentially is buying it, closing on it, cleaning it up, whatever, then listing it on the MLS. There's closing costs, there's holding costs, there's selling costs, everything's a little bit more expensive, but it complies. And a lot of times you can get better buyers because you can get can't get FHA buyers, some conventional, but you can get more retail buyers.
What are the timeline constraints to wholesale? Like how many days do I have to?
Yeah, again, I think his response was, did you have a contract on it prior to you closing?
So
Then that means you're trying to, you marketed your equitable interest. That's what you did. You didn't own it and you were trying to sell it already.
So how quickly I close after I buy it?
I wouldn't think.
The law also reads that you have to make marketable improvements to the property between buying and selling.
Is that?
Is it right or not?
I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not either.
You have to make improvements before you can sell it. I can't imagine they would tell you what to do with your property.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think.
I thought I saw something like that.
In
Maybe it was the first draft or
in SB, yeah, it could, yeah. Was it in 1075 or in the predatory changes?
I thought it was after it was already filed, but.
Okay. Okay. We'll look into that.
We had a conversation the other day about that, like what's still marketable improvements.
Yeah. Yeah. If I clean it up, if I paint it.
Putting it on the market is marketable improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, but we're gonna look at that. I didn't. So again, there's a link to the law here. I've read it a handful of times in preparation for this. I didn't see anything about what you have to do, or even how long you have to own it, or any of that. It's really just disclosures and stipulations and provisions that need to be added.
I do see it in the definition of double closing. Um, One with the, double closing, engaging double closing as used in this paragraph. Double closing means the wholesaler simultaneously closes two separate transactions on the same property, one with the original seller and one with the end buyer, without the intent to reside in or otherwise materially improve such residential real estate.
Materially.
What can we get done in an hour?
Yeah.
That's referring to the.
So here is the law. Here's what he was. Here's what he was just reading. So a wholesaler is blah, 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 someone who engages in double closings as used in this paragraph. Double closing means the wholesaler simultaneously closes two separate transactions of the same property, one with the original seller, one with the end buyer, without intent to reside or otherwise material improve. Yeah. So I think, again, I think a good rule of thumb might be, were you marketing it before you owned it? And did you contract it before you owned it? You were working with your equitable interest, not ownership. I think that might be the. So if you buy it and then call your buddy and say, just locked up an awesome, or just bought an awesome house, and he buys it 7 days later and you did nothing to it, I think you've complied with, in my opinion. Okay, I got some head nods. So I do not work for OREC and I have no authority there, unfortunately.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of talk about double closings. What about just an assignment? Like if this is basically all wrapped into one.
Yeah. So definition of wholesaling is A, if you assign basically, and B, double close. So A is enter into a contract to purchase real estate with the intent of assigning, selling your
Okay.
contractual
I see
rights.
that. Okay.
Yeah, so wholesaling is, are you just signing it? And that's where, like, again, wholesaling, double closing, novations, different things are all, they're all wholesale. They're all in the umbrella of wholesale. They're just different strategies of a wholesale. So they all require compliance. That's where people would say double close, and they would say, I'm not wholesaling because I'm taking possession. But again, wholesaling's definition is marketing equitable interest, which you had to have done to have closed on it at the same day. You can't close on something the same day if you didn't already market that equitable interest. Yeah.
About listing MLS.
When? So, good question.
I see that little sentence all the time on some listings and it.
What do you see?
Huh?
What do you
It
see?
says
What
that the listing agent has equitable interest in the property.
in the real? Okay, so that is a violation of MLS rules, and they can.
Well,
That's been the case. So we got $35,000 worth of fines for doing this.
oh, well.
You know, they knocked it down. They knocked it. We do see it all the time, and we have a conversation about this all the time because people don't play by the rules, whether it be because of ignorance, or because of we'll do it until we get caught. Because you can make significantly more money listing properties on the MLS than selling them to a list of wholesalers. So some people see it as just a cost of, if I get a fine, it's a cost of doing business, but I made an extra $100,000 wholesaling houses on the MLS this year, but it is a violation. The reason it's a violation is because it's a violation of the MLS. It has nothing to do with OREC. OREC doesn't really care about the MLS at all, or OCMAR, or OAR, or NAR. OREC doesn't care. So you have to comply with OREC rules and regulations and MLS rules and regulations and ethics standards. So the reason you cannot list wholesaling properties in the process of being wholesaled on the MLS is because it has in the definition of active listing in the MLS rules, it cannot be under contract. That property already has a purchase contract on it because that wholesaler is buying it. So it cannot be marked active on the MLS if it has a purchase contract on it already. So if that's the case, then you're violating the MLS rules, $2,500 fine.
So do some people have another definition of equitable interest when they do that in the MLS?
Maybe. I have no idea. I don't. underestimate people these days. So maybe, my assumption is they don't know that rule exists. Also, your listing agreement, so they can't be doing that without a POA, because a listing agreement must be signed by the owner of the home, not the seller of the home. There's a difference between an owner and a seller. The person selling equitable interest, the owner of the home, is the owner of the home on title. So the owner must sign your listing agreement. If they don't, that means there must be a POA, which is violating this. So you're either violating this or you're violating MLS rules to do that. And if it happens, I mean, we're seeing it a ton. We're seeing a lot of people get contracts, get POAs, sign listing agreements, and list them on the MLS. It's happening a lot. And so,
Okay, so this is probably a weird question. But what is the difference between listing it on the MLS, and you can't because it's already under contract, and when you have a property that's a contingency?
so you can't list it. So the same.
Because that was like.
Well, we're getting real technical, but let's do it, because when someone's trying to charge you 35 grand, you start reading the rules. So the only so this is what a lot of people say, it's contingent on financing, so I can keep it active on the MLS, right?
Yeah.
No. MLS defines contingency by only a house. It does not include financing contingencies, inspection contingencies, anything like that. The word contingent only means I have a house to sell. So a lot of people, you might have had a realtor say, we're going to keep it active on the MLS until your financing is, until the appraisal or whatever. Can't do that. That is a violation of the MLS rules. So the reason they can do that is because they have a contingency of house to sell, which allows them to keep it active and market it in that contingency agreement. Yes, yeah, Brittany. So, so any other contingency does not give you permission to keep it active because it has a purchase contract on it. So you have to go pending. Yeah, pending, backups wanted. And if they move their contingency to a presently under contract, you have to move it pending at that time. Did you raise your hand, Brittany? Okay. So if there's a purchase contract on the property, MLS mandates that you have to move it pending on the MLS. So anyone doing that, equitable interest listed on the MLS, is a violation. They just don't know it because they haven't been fined $35,000. Yeah, maybe they need to be. Everyone needs a good $35,000 fine. Some have to be learned hard. Yeah, they'll learn the rules then. So.
I've got one question.
Yeah.
So this is totally not my world. So, and the reason why I'm here is I have an investor buyer who likes to put his name and then his signs because he sometimes wants to pick which LLC he's going to use where the money's going to come from or create a new LLC. Is he opening himself up to this wholesaling world by putting his name and then or a sign?
I wouldn't think an arm length transaction.
Okay.
I wouldn't think
it's
so.
his money, but then
Yeah.
I said I don't want to get him into a weird gray area because then somebody well, are you trying to actually wholesale it to somebody else?
Yeah, I think if you can prove your owner, I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't think so. No. Again, it comes down. If you get in trouble, if someone turns you in, it will come down. They're going to look at, just like the Oklahoma Attorney General said, we're going to have to look into it.
Right.
We're going to have to analyze it. What is your intent here?
Yeah.
And if your
There's
intent,
going to be some precedent set.
no, they're not just going to be like, oh, different LLC. Here's $2,000 fine, $2,000 fine. You know.
All his LLCs, all his money. It's just
I wouldn't.
He creates a new one.
Anything to add on that? Yeah.
Okay.
If he was intending to assign it to an entity that he doesn't own,
Okay.
I think that's good.
What if he doesn't own it wholly? What if it's, you think that?
If he's an owner,
Yeah.
Managing member.
Yeah.
Membership. Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't wanna say without one knowing.
Right.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
likely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I can leave now.
Is it pointing at the thing at all?
No, not
Okay.
really.
Sorry, guys. We'll see if anyone's even watching anymore.
For agents who primarily work with investors, how do you think, what's your suggestion to protect ourselves? Because I have a lot of investors who do buy off-market properties, and those wholesalers are not licensed.
Yeah.
So what would be my best route to be able to just be like, hey, like, are you licensed? Like, how
Yeah.
does that work?
So question is, as a real estate agent, how can you protect yourself against people potentially violating the rules? I wouldn't think, Patrick, David, if agent is caught up in this, they wouldn't have any liability OREC wise, right? I mean, if a wholesaler is violating the rules and then just uses them to buy or sell a house, they wouldn't have any obligation there.
I would say it's probably based on the transaction and where the fault occurred. If the agent was involved in the transaction where there was maybe violations of this, possibly they could be.
Okay.
But if
Okay.
if the wholesaler is tying up the property and the wholesaler is also buying a new personal home and the agent's over here, they
Yeah.
could be liable for anything.
So if you're so if you're involved in it, you could potentially, because these are licensing rules.
Yes.
So you have to comply. Just like if you know about something in a disclosure, you have obligations to disclose. So, yeah. So these are licensing laws that have to be complied with. So if you're aware of it,
There's 3 investigators. It just depends on which one you draw for the day.
yeah, yeah. Can I take you to lunch? So one thing I've learned with these two gentlemen is if you're unsure, call first, and they might tell you no, and you can't do it, but at least you're out of the hot water. It's better. A lot of times I like to ask for forgiveness and not permission. With your license is not one of those times. Let's make sure we're doing it right. And if something happens where it does come back on us, hopefully I have a little bit of benefit of the doubt, because I was trying to seek some guidance here. So there's some value in understanding what you're doing, and if you can or how to do it correctly or whatever it might be. So potentially, yes, if you're involved in the transaction, it sounds like you could have some obligation. So the second part of your question is, what would you recommend we do? Like I said, I'm kind of doing with all the investors at our brokerage and any agents working with investors, I'd ask them to see all their contracts. How are you buying houses? What are you doing? Walk me through it. And then you can say, did you know you are violating this? And it just takes one pissed off investor that lost out on a deal to turn you in, or one pissed off homeowner to call David and say, hey, look into this for me. And now he's got 5,000, 10,000, however many deals he's done that way, now he's got fines. So guide them on that.
So even if I have an investor and I'm providing an actual real estate contract to that wholesaler for this investor to purchase their property, I should be looking at their contracts that they have with that homeowner as well?
I would recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, if they don't want to show you their contract,
Yeah, it's a little sketchy anyway.
well, what are we doing? Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. It tells me everything I need to know. Yeah. And again, I know there's some proprietary stuff maybe in a contract or how they do business, but I need to make sure, I don't need to see the whole thing. Show me these things. Make sure, show me there's not a POA. Show me there's these stipulations. Show me there's a 2-day cancellation period in there. Show me these things that you did, because you have liability now if you're a party to that transaction. It also creates liability on the MLS side. If you don't know the rules and someone says, hey, I got this listing, will you list it for me? Heck yeah, I'll list it for you. You go put it on the MLS, and now you get the $2,500 fine, not the investor. MLS fines you, because you're the actually they fine the broker, because we're the participant, you're the user. But then guess who my first call is? You. So I would recommend, if you work with someone regularly, or if someone calls you and says, I want to list properties that I'm wholesaling, look at their contracts. Yeah, look at their contracts. It's frustrating because it makes a lot of money for people.
Aren't following the laws. Who's going after them?
So just like most ethic and realtor rules, it is self-policed.
Okay.
So you just have to piss off the wrong person.
Okay.
And
And you send them to.
and then,
correct?
yeah, you file a complaint.
So
Yeah.
you guys are allowed to go after people that don't have licenses that are doing. Okay.
Yeah, acting as a real estate agent is a violation of the law. I mean, it has some big fines, doesn't it?
They're under the same fine.
Do you have
Okay.
finders?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I get a cut of the fine?
And with those cases, it's kind of like the $5,000 total or per transaction, we can go after the total amount earned
Oh yeah.
for the whole period.
If you're not licensed. Okay, yeah. So fines are bigger.
They're actually gonna be